then twice the way it is now.
Cynthia Renee McMillan. Cynthia Renee McMillan. No, it's Cynthia Renee Gillishammer. Cynthia Renee Gillishammer.
Cindy, do you have short dark hair?
Yep.
Okay, I want to make sure I have as you. Okay, and what would you like to work on? Did you have questions prepared?
I guess just, I don't really have a question. The only thing that I wonder about are, it's just been so negative around me lately. Just so many things come at me, and they're very negative, and I haven't been able to quiet. I'm very powerless, and I'm very angry. So my question, I don't even know if I have a question. It's just, will I be able to handle it? All of this.
And say your husband's name for me.
Guy.
Full name.
Guy Roger Gillishammer.
And your father's name?
My father? Robert Allen McMillan.
Okay. I'm seeing kind of a heavy male energy in your space, and that's why I'm trying to identify. Do you know who that is?
The heavy male would be Guy.
Not heavy size-wise, but kind of like intense heavy.
That would be Guy.
Yeah.
Intense right now.
Do you work, Cindy?
Yep.
What's your employer's name?
My employer? Carrie Bryan. She's my boss.
Is there a male at work?
The president of the corporation.
And what's his name?
Russ Warner.
Well, that's the energy I'm looking at. Okay. It's like a cracking of the whip kind of an energy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Has there been some kind of a crackdown lately where he's real angry about some stuff, or feeling like some things in the business are kind of, well, what it looks to me like is he's feeling out of control and projecting a lot of it out to other people. Like a lot of dissatisfaction, it's kind of coming down through the chains, but it's hitting you right across your second and your third chakras.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
Yeah.
I've been very angry with him. He's very condescending. He's very sexual.
Oh, incredibly condescending right now. And it's real interesting, too. It's like on a second chakra level, too. And some of it is about, what it looks like is he's going through some kind of a trip right now about feeling like people have had too much leeway or something, and things are falling apart, and like he's got to crack down even more. And it's like, is cracking down each level on the chain of command. But that with the women in particular, like he's thrown out like this blanket energy about putting you, quote unquote, in your place.
Yep.
And that's hitting you really hard, because you've worked through a lot of issues around males doing that kind of a thing. And it's like coming as kind of a, I shouldn't be having to deal with this kind of energy thing, you know? Like you've addressed it in your life quite a bit, and felt like you shouldn't be having to deal with it at this level anymore, and yet there it is, you know? And trying to see what it is. Well, the first thing I'm seeing that's drawing it to you. Well, this is interesting because he's hitting you in the second and third around. Do you know what the chakras are?
I did study them somewhat, but I can't remember.
Well, the second chakra is kind of an odd place for him to be hitting you in a way, because that's like the sexual chakra, but it also is the seat of female creativity. Is in the second chakra. It's just below the navel. And the third chakra has to do with power, like being able to own your power, or whether you let others overpower you or you overpower other people. And he's hitting you in both of those chakras, the sexual and the power chakra. And it's kind of this thing about putting you in your line. It's like telling you, just do what you're told and don't make waves or don't try to create anything new. It's like he's really put a big shutdown on people's creativity and gotten more controlling. And
that's him.
Yeah, and it's really affecting you strongly. But it's interesting, even though those energies are in your second and third, one of the things that's leaving you as an open target is the very fact that you work there. And like an overall group agreement about working there. And it's interesting, it's like the company that you work for, that when you start working for them, it's like on a psychic level that there is a contract or an agreement that has to do with the things that you will be in denial about openly. It has to do with things that are not allowed to be talked about, the types of suggestions that are not allowed to be made, and the types of, even the ways that you can communicate with the people who are your quote-unquote authorities. And it's like a blanket agreement, even just to work there at all. And then the other thing that he's hitting you on is some old pain in your heart chakra area, in the center of your chest, around feeling, well, it's a past energy from times that you have felt like you've really bent over backwards, so to speak, to please men in your life, and still felt like you failed at it, and had some pain around the rejection of that, and feelings like your creativity or individuality have been rejected by men. And so it's like it's affected you kind of on a self-worth level, having that pain there, and it gives him the open doorway to go down and attack you on the female creativity and the power level. So what I'd like to do is start by clearing some of this pain out of your heart chakra area.
Okay, hang on.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a relationship earlier in your life that ended in a divorce? That kind of a relationship that kind of failed early on, that you felt some shame around?
Yeah, it was a 4-year relationship. There was no marriage.
And what was his name?
Marty.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. It's some old pain and grief in your heart chakra around the shame of failure. And that's a lot of the energy that I'm looking at in terms of feeling like your very individuality and creativity couldn't make it weren't enough, you know. And there's some that's the pain energy that I'm looking at. Is some old grief and pain in the heart chakra around that, and how that affected your image as a female and as a creative being. Just hold on a second. Did you leave that relationship?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Angrily.
Huh?
Very angry.
Yeah. Well, he kind of put some programming in your space that's almost like a curse. I mean, I hate using words like that, but sometimes the energy's almost like that. He put this programming in your space that if you couldn't, it's like that if you couldn't do it with him, that you'd never be able to do it with anybody. It was like, it's kind of like if this relationship didn't work out, that you would never, that it would never work out, and that it was kind of like it was just your, like blaming you. But it looks like kind of a counter-defense thing.
He was pretty blatant about that.
Huh?
He was pretty blatant about that.
Yeah. Well, it's stuck. I mean, it's like, as I look at you, there are like little black holes going across your chest area and down into your third chakra and across your throat, and even up into the upper head area of like programming that he put in your space about that. Some of it was about you not having what it took to hang in there and make something work. And part of it is about life isn't going to hand you what you want. You have to make it that. And I don't know, there's some kind of cynical stuff, but then most of the tale, some of the early stuff kind of goes to with your father too. But then the later is more like him telling you that if, that it's your fault, and if it didn't work, that you'd never make it work because you didn't have the kind of, like you just didn't have what it took to, to create that. Was he kind of a little boy in a lot of ways?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Very immature.
Yeah, extremely. Now, say his name again.
Marty.
Full name?
Marty. I don't remember his last name. Marty Reese.
Okay, there's just a little more in the throat area. Just a second. Did you partly leave that relationship to pursue some of your own goals?
I knew, the only thing I knew was I wanted to change geographically. But I was so hurt that I left, not knowing.
Yeah, what it looks like is just there's a little more programming in there from him about to make a relationship work, you have to give up personal goals. Something about you pursuing some of your own desires and goals, and like some guilt that he put in your space about that. And this is one of the overlapping areas with the boss right now, is about him telling you, that there's no room in this job for any kind of personal ambition or personal creativity, that you have to follow the rules and do it his way. And that's one of the areas of overlapping where the boss is able to get into your space with some of the like accusation energy that was put there by that man. Okay.
Like the more I'm assertive, the more it gets harder.
Yes. Because the programming is you don't have a right to assert. You only have the right to go along with the program the way it is.
So the way Russ comes at me is very shame-based. The way Russ comes at me is shame-based.
The boss?
Yeah.
It's more like the shame that you had in your space allows him to come at you. But the way he comes at you is more like a cracking a whip, and like it's very much like a slave owner kind of mentality. Like, you stay in line and you do what I say or else. And it's more like the shame energy was just part of what was there with Marty that allowed his energy in because of some of your doubts about your personal creativity. Does that make sense? So they're different, but they tie in together. it's like a male authority figure telling you to follow the script and not to have any of your own ideas, which is a lot of what Marty was saying, And the shame was from you feeling like a failure to make the relationship work, a failure to be able to be the person who could keep it together, or to even, in some areas, like shame around feeling like he didn't want you enough to help you have some of the things you needed to make it work, But now with the boss, that's not so much the issue. It's just that was some of the unresolved stuff with the other. Now, but this work situation looks very oppressive.
Oppressive?
Yes. Is that something that you've considered changing?
Yeah. Very
Good.
So in the last week.
Well, I think it's time. He's going to get worse before he gets better. There's something happening where there's a failure happening within, things are not measuring up within the company the way he thinks they should be at this time. And he's really pissed off. And he's looking to blame everybody but himself, And it looks like a big thing in the company is a lack of creativity on the part of the employees because of a lack of space for it. And he's going in exactly the opposite direction of what needs to go to kind of pull it out. Like he's thinking that the thing is to crack down even more when he doesn't realize that people are already stifled and that it's like the morale and the inspiration isn't there. And it's just kind of the thing that if you're the kind of person who could be like an assembly line worker and never have to think or feel anything, that it might be okay. But it doesn't. I mean, to me, it looks really oppressive for you, and it's like a going backward in time in a way.
It's very frustrating.
Yeah.
And the morale is really low right now.
Yeah.
It's like an addiction. And we've lost a few counselors, one to the disease, and he's going to crack down. I guess I kind of feel that coming.
And what is your profession?
I'm a chemical dependency technician.
Mm-hmm.
I work in detox. And I work with...
God, what a shame to have someone like that in that field.
Yeah, but he's very sick. I mean, dysfunctional in his own...
He's dysfunctional in the thing that he's just so controlling. He's like the Baron instead of the president running a cooperative thing. There's no cooperative energy there at all. It's really very slave owner. Gosh. He's the one that needs to leave to make things work. Well, I'm sorry. I wish I could give you better news, but it looks to me like it's going to get worse before it gets better. He's just not... He's not in a creative, innovative mode. And some of it is like his own addiction to power is underneath that. So it creates a level of denial of having to follow the books, but not to really look at these things on a personal level. And it's even inhibiting some in working with clients about keeping it kind of impersonal on some levels. And the people who do tend to work with the clients on a more personal level, like there's part of him that doesn't like that. Like he kind of resents it in a way. He wants it to sort of be treated more like a by-the-book kind of routine thing. And that energy just can't work in that kind of profession, I don't believe.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah. What I'm seeing is it's just like, you really do need to make a change, and that the negativity there is within the unit. And there were things for you to learn there and to experience, but that you're really very complete. Well, let me put it this way. You're complete as far as you can go. You're not really complete there from some of the goals that you had set for yourself, but they're just not possible to meet there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Are there other places around where you can do this kind of work?
Well, I have got some options that I have started looking at. So because I want to work with that person.
I was just going to say, is there a smaller organization with a woman who's kind of a very compassionate being?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's working somewhat in preventative and somewhat in people who have already begun. Yeah, that one looks really bright.
It's working with probation officers.
Good. Yeah. It looks to me like you're going to be doing some preventative teaching within that job too. That job looks good, and it also has to do with validating the female energy. It's like the person that you'll be working with, it looks like approaches it from a from a much more female nurturing kind of a place. And that's what you're really needing, is to be somewhere where your female creativity is validated and not treated as a less than thing. And what's the name of that organization?
It's just through Grand Forks County Juvenile Court. The job title is a tracker.
And who's the woman you'd be working under?
The woman who told me about the job, her name is Beth Carl. Or there's another lady called Irene Burnt.
I'm not clear that that's the one I'm seeing. Would one of those women be your supervisor? Or do you know who the supervisor would be?
I guess I haven't met her.
Because neither one of those are the female energy I'm looking at. Because the first one that you named kind of has some fear in the job, and the second one has created kind of a hardness to try and stay detached. And neither one of them are the woman I'm talking about. The way you'll recognize this woman is she has soft eyes that are very sincere, and when she talks about the people, she talks about them with a lot of caring in her voice. It's like there's a lot of compassion and a lot of caring, and I don't know if it's the job in that organization or not, but I do see some preventative work involved, and I see you being much, much freer to be creative and not having the kind of competition energy there about whose idea things are. You know?
I guess the only time I've ever felt free with what I love to do is when I public speak.
Well, I see you doing some of that in the preventative work. It may be within this organization, but I see you doing things like films or slideshows or something with parents and then with kids also. And that you may be doing some work individually with clearing up some situations, but that you'll also be doing some informing and some working with counseling of parents of kids with addictive problems to teach them how to get out of judgment and to become supportive instead of codependent through guilt. And is that something you've been interested in doing? That's what looks good. I mean, and it looks like part of the thing even in this job that's kind of falling down is that if things weren't going wrong in the job right now, like you could end up hanging in there longer than you should, and it looks like to meet some of your goals within the work that you really have to go to another situation. And so it's really a very positive thing that's happening, even though it may kind of look negative and heavy right now. The negative heavy there is really for the purpose of moving you out where you can be more creative. Yeah, that's all I'm seeing on that right now. Now, on other issues of negativity coming at you, do you want to be more specific about other areas of your life that this is happening?
I think of the financial situation where right now it's real up in the air because my husband's getting out of farming.
It's what?
He's getting out of farming. He's quitting.
Quitting farming?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we've got everybody in the government, you know, in all the monies, and it's frightening, and it makes me angry. To be very honest, I'm still angry.
he's getting out of it?
No, that 3 months after we were married, I've been married since June. 3 months after we were married, he said that he needs to get honest with me, and that he didn't have 6 years of recovery, sobriety, whatever. He had trying to lie. I'm still angry because I felt like
like you kind of got led on in a situation, and then you were in it before you found out the truth?
Yeah, and like I wasn't good enough to tell, or you didn't trust me. Like, all the way. So I still...
And say his name? You know, I think the interpretation of what happened, I mean, I'm certainly not saying that lying to you is the right thing to do, but I think you might look at taking a different perspective on why it was done, because it looks more to me like it was a situation of him thinking that you'd think he wasn't good enough. And that when you start interpreting it as you not being good enough or trustworthy enough, it really has nothing to do with it. It really has to do with his own self-esteem pictures. And so it's like the shame that made him finally tell you, was one of it's like his own self-respect was hurting in the matter. And that he may have even seen it as like not trusting you to not judge him or something, but the issue was he's judging himself. And so the issues really have to do more with his self-confidence and his self-image than they do about how he was feeling about you. And it is manipulative, but it was more like he was like afraid that you couldn't handle the truth because he doesn't like himself on some of those levels. And part of it has to do with promises he'd made to himself about things he would do that didn't quite get completed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's really, if you can look at it as it was his self-esteem issue, and yes, the impact it had on you was negative, but it wasn't personal against you. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And that does make sense, I guess. I just wanted to...
Yeah, I mean, the energy when I'm looking at it totally is like his own fears between his third and fourth chakras, his heart and his power chakra, and it's like, and the power chakra is also the seat of self-esteem, and the heart chakra is the seat of self-worth, and it's like, that's where I see the energies in him about this, and also some stuff in his third eye area, like the way he sees himself, his self-image. It's like all three areas of self-respect, self-esteem, self-worth, and self-image. All four of those are basically where he was coming from. And it's where he's kind of still coming from with you on some levels,
That makes sense.
Yeah. And it also has to do with a part of him that kind of doesn't have a belief in his own ability to keep things together. So it's like a test of seeing if things will endure, finding out the truth about him or not. Which doesn't make it fair for you, but he's not really consciously testing you on that level, but there's a part of him on an ego level that is. The part that says, yeah, you can't make it, If someone knows the truth about you, they'd never stay with you. That kind of a thing. So all I can really say is depersonalize it, but still deal with your anger. And the anger is something, it looks to me like you have confronted him with the anger too. And that's good. It goes back. Was your father somebody who was kind of a charmer but didn't have much depth? Like, kind of would tell people what they wanted to hear sometimes, but didn't have a whole lot of depth behind it.
Yeah, he is more so right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. He means well, but he doesn't get down there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like some of the issues around your father, and wanting to believe in him, and wanting to believe in him, wanting him to be sincere, and wanting to know that you can count on him even when you can't. have kind of gotten projected into the relationship with your husband. Only with your husband, things get out on the surface more for you to end up dealing with them. So, in a way, it's kind of like marrying someone who has some similar issues with your father, only who's working on them and is bringing them out on the surface. And for you, it's like a progression in your evolutionary pattern to be in this relationship, because the things don't have to stay in denial anymore. Even if they are for a while, they're going to get out there, because he just doesn't have the kind of energy that can keep things in forever, you know. And so in a way, it's like an opportunity when things come up in the relationship for you to look at the unresolved parts of your relationship with your father and how they could be transformed if he were willing to look at them. And I'm not saying that's true in every situation, but in kind of a general, overall, that's what you're doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, my God, I wish, you know, the hardest part to doing work with people from out of state especially is that there's other kinds of therapy that sometimes kind of go along with issues. And one of the main things that I would see you needing to do right now is something along the lines of what we have here called alchemical hypnotherapy work, or like hypnotherapy regression type of work, of going into some past situations specifically around healing the issues with, well, there's some with your mother too, like some of her dominance energy that you need to deal with. And that can get projected out in males too, because your mother ran a lot of male energy. And it's interesting, your mother ran a lot of male energy, and your father ran a lot of female energy. And only his female energy was to cover up some passive-aggressive male stuff, you know. And I mean, a lot of what would be really good for you to do would be able to do some like hypnotherapy work and do some healing in the relationship with them. But what I can recommend that you do is to start taking some of the situations in your life, like with your father and your mother, where you felt really betrayed by them, or you know, hurt, or like they weren't really there, and see yourself as an adult go into those situations, like walk right into the middle of it, stop it dead in its tracks, tell them off, do whatever you need to do, and then take the you from the past out of the situation and be her best friend and counselor, and explain to her what's going on and what she needs to do to take care of herself. And also letting her emote. You know, there were a lot of situations in which she didn't have the right to emote, and so she'd end up crying, when what she really needed to do was express rage. And it's like she needs somebody that she can express the emotions to, who isn't going to judge her, put her down for it. And so going into these past situations as your own rescuer, and then letting that part of you that you rescue express herself to you about what she's feeling. Her feelings of powerlessness, her feelings about, even when I try to make them understand me, it's just like they don't want to understand me. They just want everything to go on their own little agenda, and it doesn't seem like I matter, and things like that. You know, I mean, those are some of the basic issues that are involved there. And the more you can get that part of you that kind of, in the relationships with them, just felt stopped dead in her tracks so many times, the more you can get her emoting and moving out of the situation, the more you can start to prevent those from coming up in your life now. And even with the boss, in a way, it's kind of funny. He's kind of like a mixture of your mother and father both. He's like your mother in the controlling way, and he's like your father in the fear of intimacy and the keeping it all on the surface way. And so you really kind of have an interesting dichotomy there. Does the process I'm talking about kind of make sense? I know that's a little bit loose, you but without you being here to actually do like some regression work with, that's about the best I know how to describe it. And some of it will be inner child work, and some of it will actually be parts of yourself as an adult, even in relationship to your husband, in relationship to other men, situations in which you felt powerless or used and didn't know what to do with it or couldn't express it at the time. And going into those situations also and rescuing the adult, telling her that she's beautiful, that she deserves better, that, letting her know that you're there to be her best friend and to not let her be used or run over anymore. And that she's not powerless, that if she starts expressing to you and saying what she wants, that you'll help her create it. Now, and the thing... So what is your husband... Is he just going to sell the farm now, or what's happening with that?
It's getting out of the... it's so hard to describe. Stopped all production, so there's no spring crop. And then what he has to do is... What they do is manipulate the books. Peter pays Paul, stuff like that. And it's thousands of dollars. I guess it's scary for me because I don't deal with thousands of dollars. God. And it's just really taken a toll on us. It's just real scary because you don't know, bankruptcy is there. And kind of puts your future on hold.
Why was that choice made?
What I get out of him is, or what I pick up from how he's feeling is, it's very sick. It's a family farm business, and it's been very dysfunctional for a long time, and he's just wanting out. And 3 years of drought, too.
And what?
3 years of drought. The drought didn't help.
You see, what I saw on his part was not that he's like... I don't see him doing any kind of an addictive pattern or anything to punish you. I just see this energy of him being fed up. And it's a way of trying to stop a vicious cycle. But,
maybe it's just tiresome.
Yeah, he looks exhausted.
Yeah, he is.
He looks really exhausted, like he just needs a break, and this is one way to do it. And yet, he's got a lot of guilt in it, too. He's got a lot of guilt and failure pictures around it, thinking that he should be stronger or be able to find a different way or something, but he's just, it looks to me like he has tried a lot of different possibilities, and that he has been as creative as he knew how to be, and that it's just like time for it to be over.
I'm very supportive right now for him. I just feel it's healthy for him.
Yeah, it looks like a very healthy move, and it also looks like one that even though he's in some fear and some self-doubt right now, that eventually it's going to be something that builds some self-respect. Like he listened to his guidance, and that's really good. But it just doesn't look like he created a clear plan first, is the problem. He just knew he had to do a pattern break. And it looks like to me like he just kind of was lacking the inspiration and the understandings of what to do in order to make it something else happen, and just decided if he did this that it would create a pattern break and something would have to happen. It's like forcing yourself into a situation. But some of the energy in that is a little off is like part of that was a bit of a punishing himself for not having been able to make it work in a more creative and inspiring way. But it also just looks to me like a very positive way of ending a very long negative cycle, and something that's kind of controlled him for a long time instead of him creatively being in charge.
very true.
Yeah. Do you want me to go into that more, or is that something he's going to deal with when he gets a reading?
That's probably...
I mean, does that give you some of the understandings that you needed, or?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you about that, except that the things that you came into the marriage with, I don't believe would be threatened in that.
No.
So I don't see you having any real worries. It's like the worst that could happen is that you'd come out with it with what you went into it with, you know? And kind of be like, for him, starting all over. And, I mean, I don't see you being held responsible for anything.
No, and I don't feel that.
Yeah. So it's mostly like being able to allow him to do his process, you know? And it does look like a scary one because he didn't really create another plan first.
It is really...
Yeah.
It's something.
So that'll be easier to work with him, I think. Yeah. So what else would you like to look at?
I guess what we hit on about the job, that's been real threatening for me lately, so it was just kind of, affirming.
It's real interesting in a way. It's kind of a parallel to what he's going through, except he made the choice, and in this case, the boss is just putting you in a situation where you have to make a choice that you might put off longer. And like both of you getting out of a situation that stifles your creativity and trying to open the door to one that lets you be more creative and more of an individual. Has there been a consideration of a relocation geographically?
Not so far. We moved in July here in Grand Forks.
From where?
I've lived here all my life, and he was living in St. Thomas, North Dakota. It was just a little community, a rural community. And that was one of his ways to break away. I don't even know if I really have any questions.
Well, what I was seeing is that it looks like in about 2.5 to 3 years that he may consider making a move to somewhere further south. Into what I'm seeing is, I'm not getting a clear sense of exactly where it is, but somewhere like southeast of where you are. I mean, like several states southeast in the southeastern part of the United States. But that doesn't look immediate. So, is that it then?
I think so.
Okay. Let me just get Job to put on a different tape, because that was pretty short. And I'll just go in and do your husband then.
Okay.
Because I thought these might run an hour and a half each. So, if that's it, I'll just have him switch the tape over.
Okay.
Okay, sweetie.
Okay.
Job?
Yeah.
Could you put the other tape on?
Stop this one?
Yeah, that one's over.
It isn't even half done.
That's okay, we're through.
Okay.